Welcome, everyone. I'm Cary Hopkins Eyles, and you are joining us at our ICUDDR using Adult Learning Principles to Improve Your Teaching and Training, Module 6. And my co-host and I are glad to have you here. And whether you attended the other modules or not, that is fine either way. We're happy to have you. So we're going to be specifically focused on using technology and online training with adult learners. And just to back up a little bit, this whole training was born of the feeling that while all of you are looking for additional training all the time, which I respect about folks in our field, most of you are very well educated on substance use disorders and co-occurring disorders and things of that nature. And while you would like to have more training, I had the feeling that perhaps some of that training needs to be less about substance use disorders, of which you're experts and of which there is a lot out there, and more on how do I teach this, since faculty are one of our main audiences and trainers. How do I teach this material? And so many of us became teachers and trainers without having an education of how to work with adult learners in the field of andragogy. So that's what we've been talking about. And I'm very fortunate to have Susana here to help me talk about that, especially in today's topic. And for those of you I don't know, I am a certified addictions professional, a global master trainer, the Deputy Director for ICUDDR, and I teach classes here in Florida at the University of South Florida.
Thank you, Cary. Welcome to you all. I am Susana Henriques. I am Assistant Professor with Habilitation at the Department of Education and Distance Learning at the Portuguese Open University. I'm also a researcher and have been collaborating with Cary and with ICUDDR in several projects, and this is one more, and is very pleasant for me and an honor to be here. Well, today we are talking about technologies and online learning with adults. And the first question is, with technologies, do we really need technologies? And I think we all agree that technology improves our lives, our daily lives. Two simple examples. Fire. We don't have to have sticks and stones anymore to have fire.
Oh, we're having trouble hearing you, Susana.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Let me just change my phones, please. Just a moment.
Thank you.
It's not my internet connection, so maybe it's my...
It's not your internet connection.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Perfect.
So, I was saying that one example is fire, and the other one, can you change please, is medical procedures and surgery. I wouldn't like to be this person and having this surgery. This is a very scary picture. So we can agree that technologies are important and improve our lives. In education, can you change, please? In education, we have a whole story of using technologies in education. We are not showing this video because it's a little bit long, but you have here the link and you can afterwards see it. But we know that, and can you change it, please? We know that have been several changes. In the 19th century, professor had all the knowledge and had the responsibility to taught that all that knowledge to the students. Nowadays, in 21st century, professor's role is of mediating access to knowledge that is everywhere and not only in formal spaces such as schools. Students become a differentiated group with concepts of lifelong learning that draws attention to time, learning through life, either continuously or periodically, and of life-wide learning that draws attention to the spread of learning which can take place across the full range of our lives at any one at any stage of our lives. So this is these are the differences we are dealing with. So what is the role of, can you, yeah, thank you. So what is the role of technology? What is actually and really the role of technology in adults education? If I have a traditional professor with a traditional knowledge transmission strategy, we can say that the role of technology is none. There's no added value to this classroom just because they have technology if they are doing the same things in the same way. If there's no difference, if there's no different activities or different strategies, there is no difference, there is no added value. We know that in learning and teaching process, there are two main key factors: professor and pedagogy. And are those main factors, these key factors, that are going to interact with technology. And these authors, the next one, please. These authors described this framework that allows us to combine technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. This is TPAC. TPAC is a framework that teachers can use to help them identify knowledge that might need to focus on to be able to teach effectively with technology. It builds upon the work of Schulman's idea of pedagogical content knowledge, and using this Venn diagram, the aim is to equally apply the three separate areas of knowledge. We will try to explain it a bit better. When we talk about technological knowledge, this pink circle here, this is the knowledge that mastery of technology, so that educator can use and confidently plan the use of technology in the classroom, including when it is not required, when it is not mandatory. The pedagogical knowledge, which is this yellow here, is the knowledge and practice of teaching and learning that an educator can use such as classroom management, taxonomies, planning, assessment, all that kind of strategies. And finally, content knowledge, which is this light blue here. Content knowledge is the knowledge of subject content, such as concepts, theories, ideas, framework, evidence, proof of established practices, including ways to develop such knowledge, that kind of things. And then we have a second level that shows us the interaction between these three areas. One of them is pedagogical content knowledge, which is this one down here. This PCK links together the pedagogical and the content knowledge to bring about learning that is built upon strong subject knowledge and teaching and learning strategies. Then technological content knowledge, which is this one. This links together technology on one hand and content knowledge on the other hand to bring about learning that is built upon strong subject knowledge and the mastery of more than the subject they teach. So it's it represents some kind of upgrade or next level. And then the technological pedagogical knowledge, which is an understanding of how teaching and learning can change when particular technologies are used in particular ways, knowing a range of tools and their appropriateness within different pedagogical strategies. And then we have this all, meaning this little triangle here that allows to combine all these elements. This is truly meaningful, deeply skilled teaching with or without technologies. Sometimes it's the best choice is not to have technologies. It differs from three individual concepts because to embrace all the three simultaneously requires a deep understanding of how all these three works together to bring about the best technologically and pedagogically sound learning based upon a deep understanding of such matter. We must keep in mind that all of these are operating in a certain context to be and to bring meaningful learning. And about this knowledge, Cary, can you please move for the next one? The context influence on this TPAC knowledge framework is on these several levels, on students, on the experiences that we as teachers allow them to have in classrooms, resources, also objectives and aims, attitudes, but also teacher training. And this is important. It is important that each one of us as a teachers understand that I don't know everything and I need to improve and I need to develop my skills and my competences, being in some pedagogical or technology way or whatever, but being this, having this learning attitude. So what is the most important, and is the next one, Cary? Thank you. What is the most important? Three ideas that we highlight here. The first one, feel comfortable with the digital platforms that you choose. Second one, think of yourself and student as an ecosystem. And third one, promote transversal skills and regular feedback. And we are going to explain each of one of these three topics. The first one about the digital platforms. It's the next one, Cary, please. Thank you. Sorry. It is important that we choose the platform or the technology or the tool which is more suitable to the strategy that we want to develop, to the content that we want to approach. So, for example, for collaborative activities, we can use a wiki from Moodle, Google Drive, or VideoWant, for example. And these are only examples. There are many, many others. VideoWant, you have also here the link to a tutorial, a simple tutorial to if you want to learn a little bit more about this software. For synchronous communication and collaboration, we can use Zoom, WebEx like now, Teams. For social participation and self-publication, we can use WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter. For mind maps or conceptual maps, we can use MindMeister or MindUp. And still about platforms, the next one, please. For discussion and social voting, we can use Tricider. Again, you have a brief tutorial and the link if you want to, if you are curious. For instructional design, we can use Padlet or Canva. For research, we can use Beyond, Scopus, or Web of Science. For gamification, we can use Game Salad or Open Simulator, and so on. These are only a few examples of the most important or more used technologies and pedagogical strategies. About the ecosystem, a learning ecosystem is a system of people, teachers, students, and others, content, technology, culture, strategy, and all these elements existing both within and outside an organization, a school, a university, whatever, all of which has an impact on both the formal and informal learning that goes on in that organization. And the skills. It's the next one, please. And we have the hard skills. Usually we have this distinction between hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are those that are gained through hands-on experience, training, or education, and they are related with some specific or practice field. For example, foreign languages, healthcare related certifications or licenses, computer programming languages, statistical analysis, and so on. Soft skills, the called soft skills are traits that made you a good worker. Personally, I prefer transversal skills to soft skills because they are so important for everyone in every work field and in daily life. And I don't like very much the term soft skills because it seems it's less important. It's minor, and I don't think they are minor.
Like how sometimes we're looked at in the social sciences as being like a soft science. Addiction or mental health can sometimes be perceived that way as well.
Yes, yes, even in substances. We talk about hard substances and hard drugs and soft drugs. That is So
Yes.
strange and so wrong, because it
Yes.
gives a wrong sense of everything. So,
Safety and risk
yes,
and exactly.
yes, yes. So I prefer transversal skills. For example, work ethic, organization, communication, collaboration, um, leadership, decision making, time management, creativity, and so on and so on and so on. So, this all being said, so building an ecosystem with the right technology and the right approach, developing some kind of skills, we must pay attention also to the e-activities planning. It's the next one, please. And for that, we have to make clear the title of the task for us and also for our students. What are the learning objectives? Give a to give a proper description, define clearly the length of this activity, include specification of different steps or different technologies that are going to be used, the learning resources, papers, books, videos, whatever, the outcomes, what do we expect from our students with these activities, and then the assessment with criterias and grades. Well, we cannot talk of technologies in education without talking about the pandemic crisis that we will live in still, maybe. Some of us think that it's already over, but we don't know. So we must reflect. It's sure we know that during the pandemic, all the learning systems moved to an emergency remote teaching, and this was important and allowed that school could classrooms could maintain and during this period, the issues of the use of technologies in education gained a new dimension because they came real and a widespread practice. What we must reflect now is now that all the classes tend to return to in presence contexts, to the traditional classrooms, what do we learn with this experience? Does this pandemic crisis result in an acceleration of the digital transformation in the educational practices? This is the discussion that we want to have with you. Cary, you can move on.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so we'll have more open forum in a few minutes, but Susana is definitely more of the expert in terms of this technology and online learning. So what I wanted to bring to the discussion was more about how do we ensure that as we increase the use of technology, whether it's in our classrooms, whether it's online, whether we're doing classes that maybe we're not even, maybe it's asynchronous, how do we maintain relationships or create and build relationships? Some of you have been in other classes with me, especially a couple of my folks who were in my mentorship course, and you know that so much of what I talk about, whether it's teaching, training, counseling, is about relationship. And so we don't want to just be, just have our students be a name that we're grading, but we don't actually have any kind of connection with them. So it's important that we have small ways to make that connection, even if we're not in a classroom, even if we are having an asynchronous instruction. So whether it's adding some personal touches to our teaching, trying to make sure we're still accessible so that our students can email us, that they can have office hours, that maybe we do a Zoom meeting and they're still face to face, or maybe we're able to see each other in person. And are there opportunities for in-person learning? Or if not, are there opportunities to at least make sure there's some level of connection, that they know that you're still a person teaching them this? So there are different ways to do this. I was really, Susana talked about the pandemic and certainly the acceleration of everything during the pandemic. I had never taught online in terms of like an actual full class. I'd done teaching training, and we went very quickly to an online platform, which I was not used to. And I was not too long into that time frame. I was observed by a higher up in our university for like my annual evaluation or whatever it was, and she was very complimentary about that, the connection piece, because when people would enter, I would kind of, how's it going, more like what you would do in a classroom. So even just your tone, I think it's easy when we get behind a computer screen to be more informal or to forget that we're dealing with human beings. So interacting when possible through audio or video, or even if are recording ourselves, I think there's times when we get more didactic, but do you include some stories or some anecdotes or things to make the folks who are listening more engaged, and to get them to see you a little bit. We can do interactive sessions, have chats, have breakout groups. Some recommend having a discussion every 15 minutes if you're doing an online class. You can do things like polls, and it's even more important when you're doing classes through online learning to do some summarizing that you might not do in person. Kahoot is one that I've used. Susana mentioned some different ones for gamification, and that's kind of fun. What I did this year with that, we're an in-person class this year, but just to bring those technologies in, is I did sort of a beginning of the year assessment of the knowledge base of my students by using a Kahoot. So I did, if you're not familiar, it's kind of like a trivia poll technology. So I had questions, and they were sitting in the classroom on their phone answering the questions. And the benefit was it let me know what they knew, but it was very, it was an aggregate. Everyone was answering the question. So no one felt uncomfortable. No one felt like, oh, I didn't know that. And it led to conversation and engagement. So that was a safe, good way to use technology. Another thing we do is we have a portfolio in one of our classes that the folks do online, and then other students do give feedback on it. So it's on a discussion group and they give feedback, oh, this was really good. I didn't think to do this way. Oh, did you think of this? Giving positive but critical feedback. So there's a lot of ways that we can ensure that while we're using, and that's a good example of like an asynchronous class. If you didn't have class sessions, but you put assignments up on some of these different forums, and then people were able to comment. And I think maybe when we open for discussion, those of you who have some familiarity can share how you've used some of these, or let us know if you're not familiar, because some of the different technologies that Susana mentioned, I haven't personally used, so I'd be interested to hear more as well.
Thank you. Yes, that's it. Cary shared already some of her experience, and now we would like to hear also your experience. How are going to happen? How is it going, this digital transformation on adult learning? How did the emergency remote teaching transform your classes and your practices? with your students or trainees. It is important to share experiences and to know a little bit more about different practices or different experiences.
Yeah, so just to open up the floor, if you want to share your experience or if you have a question, anything on this in this area, so we can have some discussion. That engagement and connection I was just talking about. Yehud, please share or ask. Go ahead.
My experience in training, I see that with engagement. I remember when I took the training with you, the mentorship, definitely in interactive activities is very, very good example. Group discussion, plenary, large group discussion, also a case study, because we have people from different countries, different culture. Case study within the context of their country was very good. And also keeping in mind what is the audience, is a millennials, or he's a baby boomer, or he's Gen X or Z. That's very important that we keep in mind what is the audience, so we can at the same time design the instructional design. But definitely interactive activities is a great thing. Group discussion, small group discussion, plenary, large group discussion. We engage with also knowledge and check also is good through very simple quiz for audience that anybody can answer the question is also good.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah, me too.
Right, so you brought up a lot of great things, and yes, we in our mentorship course we did a lot. That was my first example personally of how much you can do online, because we did like role plays, which I think I wasn't as comfortable with, but we all got more comfortable with it, and that was one of the most impactful things that people told me after the training. Like they were able to see how certain skills, kind of those hard skills that Susana was talking about with counseling, how they work in action. But we were doing it, people were in Mexico, people were in, around the world, everywhere, Nigeria. And as you said, you got to also do examples where people would bring up case studies and you'd hear things that were from completely other parts of the world, and you could see what was similar or different and how they were being addressed. So there was a lot of real positives there. So I see a couple comments in the chat. Oh, and also just to go back to what you said about like tailoring to your audience. And I think Susana mentioned that, like with your ecosystem, like that is so important, because you don't want to make something, really technologically heavy for a group that's not comfortable with that. And you know that you can do more with some of the younger groups coming up that do everything through technology these days. So George, good to see you. Glad you're here. Go ahead, Susana. What were you going to say?
Sorry to interrupt you. Just to add that, yes, here we are addressing these issues to adult learning. So that's why we didn't mention those differences. But yes, it is very important to keep in mind what is, who are our.
Oh, we're losing your volume again. Well, while Susana does that, George, thank you for your comment. You're right that the pandemic did make us do more, reach more, as you said, and was very challenging. I've heard a lot about how it really accelerated processes that were going to get there technologically, but didn't, but got there way quicker, maybe 5, 10 years quicker. And then Dr. Mohammed, we need to be fully equipped with these technologies in order to work with more proficiency. Grace brings up, it's doubly challenging in poor resource contexts like ours. It's important to provide options and be inclusive in your approach. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Grace, because we don't want to, give this, oh, look at all these options that we have, when we know that not everyone, that's not going to work everywhere. There's going to be areas that don't have accessibility. I will say a nice thing is that a lot of these technologies are free or open access. But of course you have to have, you still have to have either good internet or the right technologies to use them on. I see comment. It's been challenging, but we are learning. I had my first digital training today as a facilitator. I like that the camera could not see my nerves. I just hope it didn't come through the tone of my voice. I think the position I was sitting in, I was not sure if I was too close to the camera or just okay. The share knowledge from different countries on at the same time was amazing, as information was from a vast group. Yeah, so those are all such good points, because and I love the vulnerability there, because we're human beings and we're used to just talking in front of a group as opposed to in front of a camera. Sometimes that can be distracting. You can wonder, like, am I okay on the camera? All of that. So it's just, some of that just comes with experience and getting used to it and getting practiced. And I personally really like being comfortable with, that's part of how I make connection with my students, is that I kind of might say something like, oh, this camera angle is not great, and kind of be vulnerable or be funny or just be authentic. So I think I'm positive you did wonderfully, and thank you for sharing that with us. Susana, are you back?
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you. Yes? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No? Yes. Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Don't know what happened. Just had that about audiences and the different backgrounds of our students, and also value their experience. And we had the opportunity to talk about this in one of our previous modules. And also about this comment here in the chat that we must, that is lots of technology to deal with. We don't have to know about all these platforms and all these tools. We just have to choose the ones that suits our objectives and the ones that help us to improve in our strategies and in our work as a teachers. We don't have to be computer experts.
No,
We
and
don't have
I
to
know.
be programmers. We don't have to do that.
No. And I've had, students recommend things to me, and I've used those. I've had students help me if I'm having trouble. And again, that's just another way to show that we're working as a team. We are not the expert on high looking down at them. And this is an area where if you're working with adult learners, but they're younger or more technologically advanced than you, which is definitely the case for me, then, that you're showing that vulnerability and openness to, oh, if they tell me, Cary, I have, a great thing you could use for this. Wonderful. Like,
Yes.
I'm open to that.
We are not in 19th century anymore. We don't have to know everything to teach and transmit to our students. It's not like that. They have valuable knowledge, and we have to, so we can share. And
So George says in the chat, we utilized our, let's see, I lost the comment for a second. We utilized our colleagues working in universities to start us off. Then we kept learning as we went along. ICUDDR has been very instrumental in that. Now we have feedback sessions after all online trainings. Connections is something that we need to keep working on as it easily gets lost. Well, thank you for the compliment, and I'm glad that we're helpful. ICUDDR has helped. That's wonderful. And I really like this, you know, getting feedback is huge. We talk about that a lot, Susana and I, in our different trainings. And yeah, you know, George, that connections to me are like key for us too. It's not a transmission of information, right? It's a relationship where we will
yes,
back and forth. And so I'm glad to hear that you're working towards those. And it sounds like you went to the right places to get information, which is great. I wonder if you can share with us anything about what kind of feedback you've received after some of your online trainings, if there's been any, if you've seen specific trends. I know one thing, Susana mentioned how now we're back some, you know, in the classroom in some cases. And I've had students who share that they're used to being in online classes and they're very nervous participating or saying anything in a classroom of 70 or 80 students.
mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's a challenge, that kind of going from maybe they were in class and they were used to that, but now they're online, and if they have their own anxieties or they're used to being behind a computer screen and now they come back to us in person. So that's a challenge that to some extent we can help by using some of these technologies as well, because they can have an opportunity to, as I said, maybe make a comment on someone's assignment, but do it on the chat group, or maybe to participate in one of those gamifications or something that makes them a little more comfortable in what they're used to. All right. Go ahead, Susana.
I was reading a final thesis of a student that made the research with students' perceptions of this emergency remote teaching period. And it's very interesting that most of them says that I will keep it simple, but the general idea is when we had good teachers in class, we had good teachers online in whatever conditions they have. When the teachers were not so great, those fragilities were with them to a different environment. So this is again this main idea that to pass here, that tools that help us to achieve some learning outcomes, to develop some skills, to build some pedagogical strategy.
Your sound is cutting in and out again, Susana. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. Yes, but I think you understood that the important is not technology.
So did anyone have other questions or comments? Maybe questions about some of the resources that we brought up, or any comments or questions that, or experiences that you've had during the pandemic or moving into a more online environment? I like how Memory says, I like that the camera couldn't see my nerves. And I think sometimes knowing that, especially if it's being recorded, sometimes there's some anxiety there. So George, you'll have to share with us if there was any interesting feedback on your online. I know for me, one of the feedback that we've received is probably similar to what Grace mentioned, that a lot of people in certain parts of the world have difficulty connecting and then staying connected and being able to hear and see and get a full experience. So when you have issues like Susana's having difficulty with her sound and things that don't necessarily happen in person, that we have to be nimble and be able to figure out. So there are times that it's been helpful to our audience, I know, to have the recording, to have the PowerPoint, the resources, but it's still not the same because they won't be able to ask a question in real time and things like that. So there's pros and cons. Obviously, we're able to reach a wider audience, but then you experience some of these challenges as well.
I think for us, the biggest thing first feedback we've been having all along is the one of tension. People feel we have been thrown into the deep end.
Yes.
We've just been working on the shallow waters. Now we're suddenly forced to swim. We don't know the skills, things like that. So the tension has been something we have to deal with. Just tell people, okay, let's put on life jackets, but we are there. We don't have a choice. We either drown or. So we kind of hold each other's hands and just say, okay, let's do it. And after the sessions, we say which parts we did very well and then which parts we need to improve. And then find with time, even people who are completely incompetent, I included. We had no capacity whatsoever. At least after 2 or 3 trainings, you find that we're going on. So I guess our work is really to build each other's confidence, and tell each other we can do it, Really, we just work with each other slowly and gradually. And after 2 or 3 trainings, you find people are doing extremely well.
Well, it's funny because that was exactly what I was going to do, George, is say you're very humble, but I know you do an amazing job, and you have a great team and group that you're working with as well. But yes, I mean, being kind to ourselves that we went so quickly. We went at, as I said, probably were accelerated 5 to 10 years in a period of months. And to be able to do it and do it well. And most of us are probably pretty used to doing, our training or teaching well, and are all of a sudden in, as you said, thrown in the deep end. So supporting each other, giving each other ideas like we're doing today, knowing that you're doing better than you probably think you are, is critically important. And I'm glad that you have the team that are working together to know that. I promise you, everyone here, just the fact that you showed up to this and you care enough to want to improve, I'm sure you're doing amazing. I see a comment, Memory says, what's a bit frustrating is when you can't see the participants because cameras are mostly off. You ask questions and it's all quiet, no sound. One can't tell if people are away from their devices or they didn't understand. Well, in person, you can read the body language. Absolutely. Absolutely. Susana and I have had the same issue. Right now, I can only see Paul. Thank you, Paul, for being there with your camera on. Yeah, and that is really tricky to get people to engage, some of the things that Susana brought up can help with that, because if you do like a poll, or if you do a game, or like one of the ones, I think it's Tri-Sider, I can't remember if that's the right one, but where it'll say like, you know, we might say, what's the main challenge you have with this or something, and everyone puts their words or a couple of statements in, and then it gives you like there's some of these give you like a word cloud or a list or a ranking. So I agree that that is really frustrating and can be very disheartening, or it's hard to engage and get engagement. Some of these technologies can help with that. When I was teaching a university course online, I did require them to turn on their camera. You can't always do that, obviously. But I at least, and if they had, they would tell me if they had a camera issue, but like if at least, you know, sometimes it's nice to at least at the beginning or the end ask people to have it on, but yeah, I don't think there's a one answer for that. I agree with I empathize with your frustration there. Oh, we can't. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? No.
Now we can. Now we
Yes.
can.
When we are in formal classes, we can require all the students to have the cameras on, because when we are in presence, they don't show up with their faces covered up. So it's the same thing. And we can make it as a rule, at least in formal schools or trainings.
But when you're doing something like this, you can't, right? So, you know, I think for me, sometimes I'll make a comment. Sometimes I'll try to be like funny about it, or say, you know, I'm gonna see your faces. Are you all awake? Are you with me? But yeah, I've had many, many trainings. Susana and I together have had many trainings where we ask a question and everyone, it's just crickets and we have no idea. People have walked away, or if they don't understand, as you said, Memory, I think that was a really good point. I can look around my classroom and be like, they're not getting this. But it's a lot harder to do when no one's saying anything and you can't see people's face. So, you know, maybe you can do things like ask them to do the thumbs up emoji if they understand, or ask them to do one of these reactions if they, you know, don't understand, you know, things that maybe, because our younger folks might be more comfortable online than in person, but some other people might be very uncomfortable asking a question in an online setting. So I don't think there's a solution, but I think there's some things you can, you know, at minimum try to show, okay, well, 80% of these folks are actually engaged. They're just not necessarily saying anything. All right. Well, we are just about at the hour, but I'm so grateful for all of the participation and these great questions and comments. I think this is an ongoing topic that we're all going to be trying to improve upon. And I like how George said we really need to be there to boost each other's confidence that you're doing better than you think. Susana and I often do that with each other after we're done with the class. Like, how do you think that went? Oh, I don't know. I messed up with this. No, you're doing better than you think. So, and we will be sending you all a survey so that you can give us feedback on what was helpful and what wasn't, and what you'd like to hear more of. Especially because this particular course that we're doing online is a pilot, this adult learning principles, where we're kind of packaging all the topics that we think are important, but maybe we missed something, or maybe something you've seen 12 times and you don't need that anymore. So we will really appreciate and use your feedback for future. This will be an entire course. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are in the world, and take care.
Thank you for you all.